Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Lynn Nesbitt. I'm chairing the panel today. Joining me on the panel is Ian Mann, who is in Boardroom C, and Valerie Werhan, who is via Zoom. Our assessor is Merrick Froelich, and our hearing secretary is Stephen Lunn. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8 on our docket today. Mr. Lunn, please affirm the assessor's and applicant's testimony.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Merrick Froelich.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, please stand and please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Froelich and Mr. Navarro. We're starting today on our docket, item number 2339 Portage Avenue. So Mr. Froelich, when you're ready, please.
File numbers 22-2888, roll numbers 13-052349,000. The assessed value that we have today is $5,335,000, and we would like for it to be confirmed. This property is also at the Municipal Board in 2020. Property is located on Portage Avenue, in between Portage Place and the Canada Life Center, instead of the NTS Center, on the north side of Portage. Original building was built in 1961 with effective year built of 86. We have a leasable area of 38,778. As you can see on page 2, we have the location of the subject property. It's on the dot, the red dot on the bottom left-hand side. And then on the bottom is the front part of the building. I had this property on a municipal board appeal in 2014, so I'm pretty well, I have a lot of knowledge with regards to the building. And subsequently, these are the pictures that we have of this property. So on page 3 shows the main entrance and one of the elevators. Page 4 shows the main floor entrance and the TV studio that they have there. And then on page 5 on the bottom, you have some 6th floor office area space. Page 6 on the bottom, You have some more hallway space, and you have a conference room. As you can see, there's new paint, and the property is in good condition. Page 5 has a boardroom. However, there's some aspects of the building that are a bit older and dated. And so you can probably tell by some of the doors in the building, and then subsequently some of the flooring. But it's still a nice building on page 9. Page 4 shows some additional pictures. Page 11 shows the hallway. 3rd floor, no changes that had taken place from 2019. Page 11. 12 and 13 show some additional pictures with regards to office space. Page 14 shows the basement storage area. Property owner has been compliant on completing income and expense mailers, and there was a sale that had taken place on September 1st, 2010. The value for the property at the time was $3.9 million. And there was 2 sales on this property. The property directly to the east of it also sold as well. And on the bottom, you can see the status of title on page 15 and 16. There was a mortgage taking place for $5 million on the top of page 16. And then you can see the transfer on the top of page 17 with regards to $3.9 million, and the information from the sales mailer on the bottom of page 17. And so what you'll end up noticing here is you'll see how the property was financed. And you'll look at our current valuation process on page 19. So we have a total area of 38,778 square feet, with 5,640 square feet at $3.95, and for the rest of the building at $14.08. Our blended rent for this property is $12.60. Using a 12% vacancy loss, 3% for expenses, $10 for shortfall, we come up with a net operating income of $370,758. Using an overall using a cap rate of 6.95, we come up with a value of $5,335,000. So what we have here on page 20 is we've got a variety of office rents that we've accumulated of OFC properties within the city of Winnipeg. And if you look at the last page on page 22, you'll end up seeing where the rents average out, where the average is $13.09, where there's a minimum of $7 and a high of $19. On page 23 just shows you the background of the appeal that I had, the 2014 municipal board order on 339 Portage Avenue. And there are some of the details that we went through there. So the value in 2014 was based on April 1st, 2012. And on page 26, you'll see how they use the $12 rent for the main floor, $5 for the basement area. The cap rate was 9%, so it was significantly higher, but you're ending up using a reference date, which is essentially 8 years old, because the reference date was April 1st, 2012, and now we're dealing with a reference date of April 1st, 2021, which is actually 9 years difference. On page 27 is our cap rate analysis. On page 29 is how the property owner has completed the income and expense mailer. That concludes my formal presentation, and I open to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Navarro, do you have any questions?
Yes. Mr. Froelich, would you agree that this is a cap rate issue?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we're not really questioning the net operating incomes, because I believe we came very close to each other. Do you have any supporting evidence supporting these capitalization rates on page 27?
Well, we do within our internal operations. So before we set out the value for 2023, we collect all the income and expense mailers. We do analysis on the rents. We do analysis on vacancy. We do an analysis on sales that have taken place. And from that information, that's how we develop our cap rate study. As you can imagine, doing an elaborate cap rate study is very, very elaborate. And so we provide just a general summary of the cap rates within the city of Winnipeg. And we're confident with the cap rates that we've used.
Okay, so where is your downtown C class?
Unfortunately, we don't have it shown on this brief. We just show a one-page summary of the cap rates that are used for downtown A and downtown B. So,
okay. And would you say that this building is specialized at this point, given the use, the current use as a television station?
I would say that the main floor is specialized use, but the floors from 2 to 5 are not, or 2 till 6 are not specialized in use, because as you can see by the pictures that I've shown, a lot of office space, some meeting rooms, a lunchroom. To me, and a part of my argument that I'd used when I taken it on appeal in 2014 was that the property could be used to be subdivided. But so the main floor, yes, with regard to the TV studio, but floors 2 through 6, no, they're standard office areas.
Okay. Now, Mr. Frolik, I've been in the office building 3 times myself, once with Lindsay Warren, and I believe I don't recall the first assessor, but I've been there 3 times. Now, when you say the comment that all the floors above the main floor could be, I guess, used as office space. Now, there are broadcasting areas in the upper floors that have been kind of, I would say, changed somewhat to accommodate that. Would you not agree? Did you not see those areas as well during your inspection?
Well, on my inspection, I have every floor listed through here from the first floor through 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
So there may be a room that's dedicated, and the reason why I couldn't take a picture of the studios, if there is one on the second floor, is because there's copyright reasons, and I was told not to take a picture during my inspection because for competitive balance reasons.
Okay, so you also commented just now that you thought this building could be subdivided. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Well, what I'm saying is when I looked at the history of the building before my 2014 municipal board, at one point, different floors had different tenants, and this was a multi-tenanted building in the past before the property owner had purchased it in 2010. So the past history of this property states that it was a multi-tenanted building before in its previous life.
But now it's suited towards a single occupant, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And you agree that the fit and finish of the building itself is somewhat dated at this point?
Well, it's not as modern as another property that we'll be looking at later on this afternoon, but it's parts of it is very modern. Like, because if you look at page 12 of my brief, you can see the flooring looks very modern. Meanwhile, some of flooring is a bit dated. So there are some aspects that are dated, and some parts of the building that are very new and modern.
So the 6.9% capitalization rate that you have in there,
Yep.
That is a C-class capitalization rate, or where was it derived from? Was it just the model?
It was model derived based on sales of our entire database from the 2020 mailers.
Do you know of any C-class buildings that have sold?
You know what? I'm not as fully engaged with regards to office properties that I am with industrial properties, so I won't be able to answer that question.
Okay. Those are my questions, Mr. Frolik. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions for the assessor?
Just a couple with respect to the renovations. The property was purchased in 2010, and I saw from the municipal board order that renovations were done prior to 2014. Were the renovations done between 2010 and 2014 on an ongoing basis, or is there a discrete time that the renovations were completed?
Well, so mostly speaking, if I look at the history of it, you know, the major, there was a permit taken out in 2014 for
Right.
$215,000 for interior alterations. But beyond that, you know, there hasn't been any significant value placed into the building since I had inspected it before my hearing.
Okay, now the effective age of 1986, was that an effective age that was derived by you as a result of these renovations? Or is that something that is, there's an algorithm that comes up with the effective age?
Well, what we did is when we looked at the building history, after our inspections, we felt that a 1986 effective year would be reflective of this type of building based on the condition and the works that's been done to it.
And finally, are you aware of what special modifications have been done for the studio area on the main floor or possibly the second floor?
You know what? To me, I'm not an expert in audio visual and television background. So I'm sure there may have been some electrical work done to it, some sort of upgrades, but I'm not an expert with regards to it. And I couldn't take any pictures of it. So yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that more effectively.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Ms. Werhan, do you have any questions for the assessor?
None, mine were just answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, I am trying to get a sense because I couldn't quite follow. When were you last in this property?
So the date of the board decision, because I think my hearing was in July.
July of what year?
Let me take a look here. Just give me 1 second. I could probably pull it up here. The hearing date was July 16th, 2020. And you know what? And so that the hearing would have been in July of 2019.
So you were in the building prior to July?
That was the date of the hearing. So I would say a couple months before that is the last time I was in that building.
And that was a full inspection?
That was a full inspection, correct?
So about May or somewhere around there of 2019.
Well, the point is there's a 3-week exchange date for hearings.
Yep.
So with regards to doing the brief and everything like that, because I know it was in the first week in July or around there. So my guess would have been in spring of 2019.
Okay.
And the reason why I asked that, because that was a spring, I had moved to industrial.
Okay, I don't need exact. I was just trying to get a sense. So these pictures then are from that time?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Mr. Navarro, when you're ready, please.
Okay. Again, this is 339 Portage Avenue, and I think we've established that both parties have been in the building at one point or another. So I'll ask you to look at the property pictures on page 6 and 7. And you can see also the description of the property on page 8. Now, what I will note about this property is that it is essentially connected to the adjacent property at, I believe, 333 Portage. And you can see that on page 7, that strange looking shape, which I don't know exactly its meaning, but it is some type of symbol. And I believe some of the facade probably incurred some of the costs, the permitted costs that we were looking at. As for the inside, I think Mr. Froelich would probably agree that the inside is dated. So I'm not sure if that if it's accurate to say that the inside reflects renovations that were done between 2010 and 2014. It may include some, but what I saw was fit and finish reflective of maybe the mid 90s, early 90s. So I'll leave that at that. I will shift to the approach that we use, which is the income approach. And we've used a rent of 1313. Again, I don't think that there's any real issue with the net operating income. We've followed these standard parameters. You can see the valuation on page 16, if you turn to that. And so we've gone with a 1313 rent, 12% vacancy, 10% or $10 shortfall, management and other of 5 and 2. That is the non-recoverables that we often speak about. The net operating income is 373,980, which is slightly above the assessors. And the big issue, obviously, is the capitalization rate, where we've gone with the capitalization rate that we've argued for C-class buildings. The assessment model has chosen a 6.90 capitalization rate. Our capitalization rate is based on our study that we submitted. We've gone over this study many times at this point. I think most people have heard that study. It is essentially a reflection of the building itself. So it's the single occupant status. It's the fit and finish of the building. So we do note that it has had some renovations, but I believe some of those renovations may be attributable to the property beside it, which is attached to it, the facade, and maybe some of the requirements for having a studio in there. So there may be some electrical requirements that needed to be upgraded, those types of things. So we think that our 7.75% capitalization rate is reflective of that. And we are asking the board to change the assessment from 4,826,000 to 4,826,000. And you can see that we've also included some pictures as well. Again, we've been in the building, the assessor has been in the building. I'm sure we both have a good idea of what the building looks like. So I will leave it at that, and I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Froelich, do you have any questions of the applicant's testimony?
Similar to ours, you have any similar OFC cap rate studies in your brief?
We have one large cap rate study that covers the office portfolio or the office properties in general for the downtown.
Because when I look at this, and so is the gap between B's and C's, do you have any analysis with regards to the difference in cap rate between a B class and a C class? Because in our documentation, there isn't a 3/4 of a point gap in our information.
Well,
so
in general, Mr. Froelich, there's a huge difference between a C class and a B class, and that's where any person valuing these properties has to be very cognizant of what they're looking at. So a B class building is essentially a building that, with the proper renovations, can be converted into an A class building. We do not think that this building could ever be converted into an A class building. So that is why it falls into that C class category. So there are structural differences between an A class, a B class, and a C class. Less so between an A class and a B class, because as I mentioned, you can take a B class building and convert it into an A class. So it has to have those features that are, for example, the large entry lobby areas. There's better fit and finish. There are more services included. There may be restaurant areas, all of those things that you would not see in a C class building. So when you take that into consideration, there is a big step from the B to a C. There is less of a step between the A and the B, simply because you can, as I mentioned, you can make a B into an A.
No other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
A couple with respect to the cap rates. And now, same question that I asked Mr. Froelich. And I'll preface it by saying in your cap rate report, sorry, in your brief, you talk about this being a C-class building because the building would require significant conversion if converted to a standard office building. What kind of conversion is required, or what kind of cost would be required to change a studio on the first floor and, as you indicated, on the second floor? Because the rest of it does seem to me to look like, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I think the floors above 2 are pretty much standard spaces. There have been some changes in terms of the electrical to accommodate, but also in the areas above the second floor, there are small, what I would call studio spaces where you could easily put an office area in there, but they've been retrofitted to support some type of editing department or something like that. So in terms of 2 and above, not a lot of cost involved in that. To the main area and the second floor, I would say the cost would be fairly significant because you would have to essentially close off the areas. And I might also add that there's an area in the back of this building on the main level. So you go up some stairs and you see that there's almost like a shipping receiving area in the back of it, which you wouldn't see in a standard office building. And that kind of suits the previous use of this property, as I believe at one time they sold furniture out of here way back in the 1960s. So they required a shipping area, which is effectively still there. So that area in itself is not usable as office area or even studio area. There is the studio areas that would have to be closed off. And, what I would say is that those areas were effectively stripped out. So shelled, meaning that they don't really have any fit and finish anyways, because they don't really need them. And then there are the basement areas, which, I would say that they're just basement areas. They're not really highly functional.
And I think that's reflected in the rents and the proposed rents.
Yeah, but I would say, getting back to this point, I kind of want to hammer in this point is that you can't make a B out of a C. And that's the important point to make.
Okay, fair enough. One other question with respect to cap rates, as I understand the cap rates, they're very similar to the cap rates that were presented for the 2018 quarterly studies as well. And I'm just wondering about cap rate compression between 2018 and quarter 1 of 2021. And I'm looking at your page 14 in the cap rate brief. The average cap rate, and I recognize that that's average, it's not related to A, B, or C or office even, looks like there's been a compression from 2018, slight compression to 2020, or first quarter 2021. Is that fair to say, or is that?
Are you looking at the previous one? So there's at least 2 charts in there.
I'm looking at the one that's at the bottom of that page. The second chart on what I have is page 14 and the Altus cap rate study.
Okay, if you give me just
one relating to comparisons with bond yields.
Yeah, if you give me just a second, I will turn to that.
And I wasn't going to use the other chart because it's relating to downtown class AA office, and I don't think this is a AA office class.
No. No. Okay, you are on page.
It's 14 on the PDF numbering on my,
Okay,
it looks like it's page 14 in your Altus brief.
yeah, I'm scrolling to it right now. It should be there. Just. Okay, so you're looking at the brokerage firm compressions.
Yeah, the spread between bond and cap rates.
Oh, bond and cap rates.
Yeah, and because it's got a chart leaving aside bond yields and commercial mortgage rates, but the cap rate, the average cap rate seems to be compressing over that time period. Is that fair to say?
I would say so. I am. Yes, I would say that that is compressing. However, if you're looking at the top chart, and again, I'm not, you're looking at the interest rates versus the cap rates.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
Not the interest rates and not the comparison, just the cap rate
Right.
itself.
right, it is showing some compression, but what I would caution is that these are also national. This is also national data.
Okay.
So there would be that negative influence from those those two marketplaces of Vancouver and Toronto that would probably affect a lot of this.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Ms. Werhan, do you have any questions?
None, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no additional questions. Mr. Froelich, is there a desire for summation?
I just have one clarification.
Okay,
Mr. Navarro said that there aren't really shipping and receiving areas in type Office A and Office B buildings. So I'm just wondering how they bring in supplies and material if there's no shipping and receiving areas in this, because I would think most offices have a receiving area and a shipping area to ship stuff out.
Yeah, so Mr. Froelich, I believe you've been in this building yourself, right? So you know where the area that I'm talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay, so that is at one point in the 1960s when this was still being used as a furniture retail store. I'm assuming that part of that was also staging, warehousing, and some type of shipping and receiving. And that's where I would think that it would differ from other buildings, because I've been in a lot of office buildings this cycle. So you don't see that type of shipping and receiving areas. What you do see is a small dock that allows transport trucks to come in there and connect with the building, and again, out come their goods.
I understand. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Yeah.
okay. So Mr. Froelich, is there a desire?
I
for
have
summation?
no need for summation.
Mr. Navarro?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes item number 2 on our agenda. I will now move to item number 4 on our agenda, which is 361 Hargrave Street. Mr. Froelich, when you are ready, you may proceed.
Let me just get my stuff together, please.
Before we begin, I just want to confirm that the issue here is amount of assessed value. Yes, okay.
File numbers 22-1043, roll numbers 13-0528, 19000. The assessed value that we have for this property is $12,496,000. The original year built for this building was at 1992, but since then it's gone through major upgrades, and now our effective year built is between 1990 and 2003. We have a leasable area of 79,887. I have not inspected this property, but the property is located north of Portage between Ellis and Capel. And you can see where its location on page 2. And on the bottom part, you can actually see additional pictures that we have of such property. This property is unique because it also has a parking structure for parking it within the building, and subsequently a parking lot outside of it. The only pictures that we have on file here is just on page 3. As you can see, it has a nice modern new finish, which is different than the hallway finish that we have for the property. When it comes and on page 4, we show some additional pictures where we have some of the building with the older facade and some of it with the newer facade. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing their income and expense mailer. So what we have here for this property is we have a total area of 79,885, and we're looking at the potential GPI of 1,046,200, using 11% vacancy, 3% for expenses, 12% for shortfall. We come up with a value of 797,736. Using a cap rate of 6.75, we came up with a market value of 11,818,000. Because we have this property as an OFB property, and when we're looking at OFBs and OFCs, what ends up taking place is that we have OFBs that are located on Broadway, which are even actually smaller than this type of property. So there's different characteristics that go into OFBs. Some of them are with regards to the new modern finish, quality of tenants, amenities. The reason why we have this as an OFB because it also has a parking structure. Some OFBs have interior parking. So it's a part of the equation on why we use this. The assessment department has done a detailed analysis of OFBs, and it just shows you a general outlook with regards to all the information and all the data that we've had to accumulate this. Just going over some highlights here when you're looking at the rents that we're using. If you look at the middle of page 7, we're showing a range of the middle portion of the OFBs ranging from $12.75 to $16. And so what ends up taking place is you could actually end up seeing that on the curve there. And then you're looking at the information here from 2020. Our average median for the rents on the top of page 7 is $14.85, $14.84, $14.58 for the medium. So we're comfortable with regards to the rents that we're using for this property based on this detailed analysis. You may have been exposed to some of this information in the past, so we're further along in the cycle, so I won't go through great details, but it's here for your review. There are no issues with regards to the parking structure income, but I just as an overview to be true to the process, there's 28 heated parking spaces within here. The monthly rent unit rate is $103.50. Using a 7% cap rate, we use $497 here. And with regards to the parking lot, there's 10 parking spots outside with a total value of $181,000. On page 16, you'll see the summary of information with regards to how we came up with the overall market value. The blended rate that we're using for all 3 properties is 6.73. And there's a breakdown between the 3 different income streams of the office B, the parking structure, and the parking lot. With that being said, if you look at the office downtown B, we're within the range of, we're using 6.73. The OFB portion of it has a similar cap rate of 6.73. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing their income and expense mailers. And I just want to go through some additional details here. So when we're going through the data, If you look at page 29, we're looking at what the net operating income is. And what ends up taking place is that when you factor in the net operating income and you include the interest expense of the 185, so we got, let me just double check here. We have a net operating income of 713,408 with the interest of 186,675. Marcelo's mailer will show this a bit clearer, but we have a total net operating income of 900,083. If you compare that to our model and net income of 840,672, we seem to be within the range of the actuals. And it's very important. I realize that there needs to be an adjustment for vacancy, but the point is the actuals are actually very close to what our models generated. Even if you adjust the cap rate accordingly, our value seems to be quite reasonable if you actually use the net operating income. That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Navarro, do you have any questions?
Mr. Froelich, this is all model generated. You haven't adjusted anything in this valuation report?
Well, because I don't believe so. I got all this information from our
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that is good enough, and we're good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Werhun, do you have any questions?
None, thank you.
Okay, and neither do I. So Mr. Navarro, you can proceed with your presentation.
Okay, so to begin with, this is 361 Hargrave Street. And just to note that 361 Hargrave Street is the civic address for the older historic building that is attached to this one. So you'll see in our pictures as we go on that there are two sections to this building, one that pertains to 361 Hargrave and one that pertains to 365 Hargrave, which is the newer building. And so the assessment department has given it the civic address of 361 Hargrave Street, but effectively it is 361 to 365 Hargrave Street. If you take a look, and I've been in this building a few times, once with Jan Trochum from the assessment department, once with Lindsay Wareham from the assessment department, and another time by myself. So I've been in this building quite a few times already. So you'll see on page 7 what I am talking about. So the portion with the Canadian flag, that is the original historic side. And then they built an addition to it at 365 Hargrave. But obviously in the general design of the building, they wanted to scale the building back simply because they didn't want it to overshadow the historic building that was there already. And that is why there is some resemblance between the two. So we don't have, for example, a building that is significantly larger than the original one. So you can see that they're both basically 5 stories. On page 8, you can see our description. What I will hone in on here is, so the 361 portion is classified as a D class. And the newer portion is classified by the city of Winnipeg as a B class. We classify this building as a C class in previous cycles for 2018, 2019, or 2020. I argued this with the assessment department, and again, the board agreed with me that this is a C class. We continue to believe that this is a C class. Nothing has really changed in the building. And I will get into the reasons why we classify this building as a C class building. So on the, if you turn to page 12, you can see that we are choosing a 1309 rent on this building for 79,885 square feet. I believe that was just a coincidence on the side. I think we should probably both buy lottery tickets, Mr. Frolic, because I don't think that ever happens. So we both have a rent of 1309 on there. Ours is based primarily on the actual rent for the larger area that is leased by the federal government, and that rent has been netted out. You can see that the current lease goes from July 15 to June 25. So we haven't adjusted that rent. The vacant space, there are 2 vacant spaces in there, which we've added a $12.50 rent and a $3 rent. And the smaller $3 rent is reflective of the basement area. In terms of vacancy, again, we look at this building as a C-class building. And in particular, we go back to this very same, I will get into that as well, but you can see the valuation on page 16, 1309 is the rent, 12% vacancy, 10% shortfall, 7% for other non-recoverables, and 7.75. So we have a capitalization rate of 9,809,798 or 9,810,000. Now, on page 17, you can see the income streams combined. Mr. Frolic was correct that we don't have any dispute with the parking element here. There is a 28 stall parking lot, and then there is a small parkade, 28 stall parkade, and a small parking lot in the back, give or take 10. At different points in history, I've counted 8 there, but we'll go with 10. We don't have a dispute with that side of it. The total value is 10,488,000 rounded. Now, following that in the appendix, you can see the income and expenses that were provided by the owner. And also the BOMA report. So this is where we get into the issue of what type of building this is. So again, the C-class buildings, what we look at is that, you know, these buildings you can make them into an A-class. I've been in this building already at least 3 times. While the pictures that Mr. Frolic has included reflect nice finish, it doesn't change the fact that it doesn't have the functionality of a B-class building. So it is a small lobby area with a security desk right at the front, so you can't even enter without actually going through the security area. And once you've passed the security areas, the one thing that you'll notice about this building is that there are the long hallways and there is not much else to them. It is a very standard office building, and that is why we placed it in the C category. Even with heavy retrofitting, this building could never become a B-class building. So as in previous cycle, we've argued against this typing of this property as a B-class building. We've gone with a C-class building. And I'll leave it at that. I'm open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Frolic, do you have any questions?
So in your analysis, comparing it from an OFB to an OFC, did you do any mathematical calculations to see what the difference in the overall value would be?
I didn't, again, because I right off the bat reject the premise that it is a B-class building. So no, we've gone with a C-class for more than 2 cycles now, or sorry, a C-class for more than 2 cycles now. We're not going to change that. This is a building that I've been in several times. I know what it looks like inside. It doesn't have the functionality of a B-class building. And
okay, so
if you go in it, you would see it.
Okay. but the pictures from above, but if we look at so when was the building addition? So when we look at your picture on page 7, would you not say at least 70% of the building is brand new, of a new modern finish?
Is it of a brand new finish?
Well, no, it would be more reflective of an OFB quality than an OFC quality.
Are you looking at the fit and finish? Because the quality is something completely different. Or sorry, are you looking at the design of the building as a B class?
I'm
Because
looking
fit
at
and
the
finish
value.
are completely different. I mean, that has to do with tenant improvements, tenant inducements, all of those things that go into building the rent and building the space for the occupant. That's a completely different question than talking about what is the design of this building, which we argue is a C class.
But if you're looking at the building per se, is it more reflective of an OFB?
No, it's not. No.
Are you familiar with any OFB properties that are 3-floor structures?
3
that are
floors?
on- Like 3 floors, like on Broadway.
I don't know, but this is not a 3-floor structure.
Okay.
It's a
I realize
5-story.
that, but if you're looking at the finish of the property, because you haven't included any pictures in your brief of the finish, I'm just wondering, are there aspects of that building that are reflective? Because the pictures that we have show that it's reflective of an OFB finish.
So Mr. Froelich, I'll try and explain this again. The fit and finish of the building can vary from A to C class. You can have very well finished C class buildings, very well finished suburban downtown buildings that have been retrofitted with improvements that make them look very modernized. That is not what the argument is, because the rent is what essentially determines the fit and finish, right? Because the property owner will put X amount of dollars into the property, into the fit and finish. That will be reflected in the rent and the covenant that they sign with whoever that tenant is. However, the design of the building is different. Okay, what we have here is a C-class building. It can't become a B-class building. It doesn't have the front lobby areas. It doesn't have the room for those amenities that you would see in a B-class building. So that is where I argue, again, this is not the first time with the assessment department that this is not a B-class building. This is a C-class building.
Okay, so in your evaluation process, do you actually look at the performance of the building, of how it's performing?
Well, absolutely, Mr. Froelich. That's why we looked at the rent. We came to the same conclusion on the rent.
Okay, so explain to me why there's 140,000 difference between what's been reported on the mailer and what you have as a net operating income on page 16 of your brief.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we are doing this on a fee simple basis, correct?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so if you're looking at the leasehold interest, which is what is in the mailer, you will see that there are no adjustments for vacancy. There are no adjustments for shortfall or non-recoverable expenses. So those are those market adjustments that we make to bring this into a fee simple valuation. So there would be a difference between the two.
So what you're saying here right now is in your evaluation, there would be like an 8.5% or 8.4% difference with regards to what it's actually performing and what they reported?
I'm not looking at the calculation myself at this point. However, yes, it would be due to the vacancy adjustments, the shortfall, and the non-recoverable adjustments that we make to bring this into and make a fee simple valuation.
So have you done any adjustments to the cap rate, considering that this is a strong, the tenant is very strong in terms of their ability to pay?
And their ability to pay?
in terms of the quality of the tenant that's within this building here. If a purchaser was looking at it, would they not consider doing an adjustment with regards to the cap rate because it's a government tendency?
Well, if you look at the lease end date, you see a June 25 lease end date. So I would think that an investor would probably look at that and say, are we going to retain this tenant here? So there would be a little bit of caution there. But yeah, I mean, look, there are some areas that are vacant in this building. They've never been able to rent them up. So the location is also an issue, as well as the building type itself, again, which we don't agree with you on, but that is why it's 7.75.
No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
I do, just with respect to the Class A, Class B cap rates that you have at page 15 of your brief. Class A, Class B, Class C,
Yeah.
Class D, and then Class S Heritage, you had basis points for risks. There are no gradations in any of those cap rate per classification. Is that something that one might expect in like a variance in the type of building, much like what Mr. Froelich was asking, based on strength of tenants, for example, or based on strength of good management, like the Bowman report refers to at page 42.
Yeah. First of all, this chart that you see on page 15 is simply what it's doing effectively is measuring the compression from last cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have seen, if you had been here last cycle for the 2020 cycle, a chart similar to this, and we simply worked in the compression from that cycle to this cycle.
Okay.
So could there be a difference based on those things that you've mentioned, the strength of the covenant, the management, all of those things? The management is, it's not a negative. These are institutional management companies. So there would be no issue with that. The covenant, well, the covenant is coming to an end at some point, and 2025 is not that far away. So I would say that there would be some caution with that. But also the location of this building is, it's not where a lot of the office buildings are. It is in a not so typical office area. As well, we're looking at the building itself, which again, I will argue till I'm in the grave. It's not a B-class building. It's a C-class building. It doesn't have those functional areas that you see in B-class buildings. It doesn't have the amenities that those B-class buildings have. And yes, it does have good fit and finish. Again, that's reflective of the lease that was signed with the federal government, and they put in good finish. There's requirements that the federal government has when it comes to finishing buildings, so those are there. But it's still, again, it's still not a B-class building. So there is still a 100-point difference between the assessor's cap rate and ours. Where it lands, that's up to you. But what we're here to tell you is that it's not a B-class building.
Great, thank you. That's my only questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Ms. Werhun, do you have any questions?
None, thank you.
Thank you. And my questions on the cap rate have been asked and answered, so that's great. Mr. Froelich, is there a desire for summation on this property?
My only summation is this, because I went through the exercise and I just want to share this with panel members. It's just that when I compared the OFB to the OFC, the two major differences is vacancy allowance, and I used the exact same rent. The OFB vacancy is 11%, the OFC is 12%. Shortfall for Bs are 12, shortfall for Cs are 10%, and the cap rates was 6.75 for this type of building because it's based on effective age, It's 6.75 with regards to 6.8. When you did this, the difference in value was less than $100,000 in terms of when we looked at the whole analysis that I had done. And this is just a summary of it here. But I did that more just for information purposes because I was curious. Because when you change some of the parameters, it changes the overall value. But in this situation, the overall value is only $100,000 based on what I had done. Thank you.
May I comment on that?
Please do. Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I wouldn't put anyone in the position where I start making calculations without substantiating it and actually entering it into evidence, and having the time to allow the other party to actually look at that evidence. So I will leave it at that.
Yeah, and Marcel, I understand that. It's just something that I had come across during my evaluation. So I thought it was unique to say the least.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. We won't be considering your revised numbers because they really weren't properly entered into evidence.
Yeah,
so thank you for that.
I just did that for information purposes, right?
Yep. Thank you. Can we take a 5-minute break, please? Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. We're now dealing with item number 5 on our agenda, 36 Roslyn Road. Mr. Froelich.
File number is 22-2473. Roll number is 12032484000. We have an assessed value of $1,129,000, but the agent has some information to share with us with regard to this property.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
Is it pertaining to class and liability?
No, this is regarding to 36 Roslyn Road.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we are waiting for some information on whether this property will be demolished. So I heard your commentary about how this looks like a very nice property. So when the owner bought the building, he was aware of some what he thought were slight structural issues. As it turns out, the slight structural issues were a lot more serious, to the point that the building can't be occupied at this point. It's not safe to be occupied. And they are kind of weighing the issue of whether this property should be demolished. I believe the property was actually struck from the heritage list. So at this point, we're just waiting for an answer on whether it's going to be demolished. If we don't get that answer within a week, I would say that what we should probably do at this point is ask you and the chair and the panel to adjourn it to maybe 2 weeks down the road. And if it's not going to be demolished, then that will allow for both parties to actually enter evidence back in, and we can argue about the value of the property at that point. But at this point, we are simply waiting for the response from the owner as to whether this demolition will go through.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, do you have any comments with respect to the information presented by Mr. Navarro?
I can confirm that there's no business assessment or no tenants in this building here right now. And I understand Mr. Navarro's position with regards to why he'd want adjournment on this property.
Okay, so Mr. Lunn, I understand that the panel needs just to go into camera to discuss this and consider the request for an adjournment. So if we could do that, please. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. The panel has considered the applicant's request for an adjournment of 36 Roslyn Road, given the unique circumstances around its potential demolition. We've agreed to grant the adjournment. However, we note that there are deadlines for the realty rule appeals to be completed. That deadline being by February 10th, I believe. So in order to just considering the possibility that this property may end up back at appeal, we would encourage the assessor and the applicant to stay in close touch and discussion in advance of when this might be rescheduled. So just giving you some ideas of deadlines, it's happening fast. But there's a month, I guess.
If I may speak,
Yes,
Madam Chair.
please.
What I will do is definitely keep in touch with Merrick on this issue. And most likely what will happen is if we do not get a response as to how this property is proceeding, whether it will be demolished, what will most likely end up happening is that we will end up withdrawing the appeal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That makes the most sense, just given the timing issues.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merrick, or Mr. Froelich, you're good with that?
Yep, I'm fine, which is why
Okay, thank you. That concludes our discussion on item number 5. We'll now move to item number 7 on our agenda, which is 330 Wardlaw Avenue. Just to confirm before we begin, this appeal is about amount of assessed value.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Froelich, whenever you're ready, please.
File number is 22-2706. Roll number is 12-020-11-67000. The assessed value that we have for this property is $1,116,000. Property was initially built in 1989, and we have effective year of 2000. The leasable area that we have for this property is 4,500 square feet. On page 2, you can see where it's located at. So it's located just within Osborne Village, just off Donald. So it's in a good location. As you can see, there's been some adjustments to the front part of the building here on page 2 with regards to the facade. Property owner has been compliant with regards to completing income and expense mailer. And there was $575,000 worth of permits on this property. So on the bottom of page 3, you can see what it used to look like. And then since that period of time, there was $375,000 worth of permits with regards to alterations, creating new office space for 2 tenants. And you can see the details of the permits on pages 4 and 5. And you can have in the following, you can see the income for this property. What we have here is we have 4,500 square feet with a GPI of 72,155. The blended rate is 1603 for this property, using 6% vacancy, 3% for expenses, $8 for shortfall. We come up with a net operating income of 63,631. Based on the age of the property and the size of the property, we're using a cap rate of 5.7% because it is a bit smaller and newer. And that's how we came up with the 1,116,000. On pages 7, 8, and 9, you can see a variety of rents that we have used for the subject property. This is from our database that we use with regards to OFSs. And we feel based on the size and location that our rent that we're using here of 1603 is fair. The average is 1585 and the weighted mean is 1601 that you can see on page 9. Page 11 shows the cap, how we develop cap rates for these type of properties. As you can see, it's within the range that we're using between the 20th and 80th percentile for office on page 11. What I've noticed, unfortunately, because part of this property is owner occupied and part of it's tenanted, they only show a leasable area of 13,076. But what ends up happening is I ended up looking at the information with regards to the leasable area, and I feel comfortable with the leasable area that we've used on this because there's a bit of a discrepancy between what we have and the agent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Navarro, do you have questions?
Yes, Mr. Frolik, and I may have just misheard you say it, but there's not 13,000 square feet of leasable area there, correct?
No, it's 4,500.
Okay, so that's good enough. I don't have a very large issue with your net operating income. I think the only issue I have is the capitalization rate. Can you tell me how you justify a 5.70 cap rate for this location?
Usually important components of the cap rates are size and the year built for this property. We have an effective year built of 2000, which with regards to all the renovations that had taken place. And how we end up looking at it is that, you know, in 2015, there was a sale for this property for 575. And so looking from that and with regards to all the upgrades and the permits, you know, I think it's we could confidently say that the inside of this building is probably a bit nicer finish. I haven't inspected this building, but you feel comfortable with rents and the only issues with regards to the cap rates. So that's all I have to add.
Mr. Navarro, any additional questions?
Yes, you'll note on your own chart that the brokerage firms are looking at suburban A and suburban B. Would you classify this as suburban A or suburban B?
You know, if anything, it's a downtown location, right? Because what ends up happening is when we end up looking at these type of properties, I wouldn't really call it suburban A or B because it's so close to the downtown area. And then what's really interesting with regards to office properties is then when we looked at land sales, just it's a bit unrelated, but land sales on Pembina Highway, which is very close to the subject property, almost derives like mark values that are within the downtown land value range. So I don't think we really can quantify it as either suburban A or B. It's in a good location, just generally speaking, due to the high population density.
Okay, but you will know this is your own information that looks at the brokerage firms that state that
we provide a little guideline on with regards to, you know, we don't have Osborne Village. Osborne Village is not listed in the cap rate studies by the major players. So this is the best information that we have here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Ms. Werhan?
Yeah, just going back to the cap rate and location and the difference in both cap rates. What's the negative of location? You mentioned that you've got to think of where it's located. What's your negative on the location?
Well, I would say potentially a negative would be for this property, there's not a tons of parking. The size of the building's actually reasonably small. There's only like 2,000 square feet of space difference between the land area and the plan area. So that would be one aspect of it. But in terms of the location of it, I still think Osborne Village is a very desirable area in terms of location. It's just like how I look at it, like River Heights. There's a premium to be had for River Heights properties. Whenever you're closer to downtown areas, or that's, you know, that would be the positive, but I think parking would be an issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I have no additional questions. So, Mr. Navarro, you can begin your presentation, please.
Yeah, this is 330 Wardlaw Avenue. And you can see the pictures on page 6 of the general location. So there is a small area in the back for, I believe, occupier parking. Most of the parking at this location would likely occur on street, as street parking is allowed in this area. So right off the bat, I would say that the negatives are likely the location. So I think what you probably find in this location is that you're going to look, you may have an owner occupier situation where they are looking at the possibility of using any particular building for a specific use. And that would be, that would probably be the reason for having an office in this area. It's not because of the intersection of major routes or a downtown where you have the downtown hub. This is more so a question of a particular use that you're planning for this building, and so off the bat, it's not an ideal location in my opinion for an office building. However, I will acknowledge that on the plus side, it has been improved, obviously. So that is a positive. It doesn't offer any parking really, so that is a negative because most uses in the suburban areas have a requirement for parking. My guess is that the reason that this one doesn't is because there is on-street parking. So that probably satisfies the parking requirement. However, as I mentioned in my comment early on and my questioning of the assessor, I don't have a really large issue with the assessor's net operating income. My issue is more so on the capitalization rate side. So I'm perfectly fine with the assessor's net operating income and an adjustment on the capitalization rate. So I can do that calculation for you based on the NOI that the assessor has provided and a 6.5 capitalization rate. So that changes the value to 978,938 or 979,000.
Okay,
And I'll leave it at that.
thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Froelich, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Werhan?
None, thank you.
Okay, my only question is about the cap rate of 6.5. I note from your table on page 15 that you give the class S 6 to 7.5 range.
Yeah.
On the cap rate. So you've then adjusted it upwards by 0.5 simply because of location?
I wouldn't say that simply.
Okay.
It's a factor of, this isn't a new building, it's a retrofit. So there's that aspect of it. There's the lack of parking, yes. There's the location. So I would say that those are the strong contributors to making an adjustment on the cap rate.
Okay. Sorry, I was just going with your the notes in your report. Just say the cap rate is adjusted because of an inferior location. So
yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that it's actually a little bit more than that. Okay, I have no additional questions. Mr. Froelich, is there a desire for summation?
No, I'm fine, thank you. We got the 3 o'clock mandate.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're on our last item of the agenda, which is item number 8, 286 Stradbrook Avenue. I note that there are 3 points of appeal on this property: liability, classification, and amount of assessed value. Can I confirm that all 3 points of appeal are under appeal?
Yes.
Okay, so you then, Mr. Navarro, would be going first to discuss classification and liability. So give us a minute to pull up your presentation. For some reason, I'm having a hard time pulling it up. Try that again. Okay, so if you can begin by taking us through item number 8, 286 Stradbrook.
Okay, this is 286 Stradbrook Avenue, Realty Roll 12031 702 000. And we are looking at file number 223447. And this is Symmetry Massage Therapy. And again, it's 286 Broadway. We have a gross floor area of 3950 or 4950 and a leasable area of 3999, 2 stories. The site area is 4939 and the realty assessment is 1,124, class code 60. So we are asking for 248, class code 10, 33.4, and class code 60, 437, or 97, sorry. And that is based on a percentage of 33.4% for the class 10 and 66.6 for the class 60. So this is not a lengthy argument. You can turn to page 7 and you can see that this building, I would say, resembles an apartment building. However, the main area is used for, again, massage therapy, so an office medical use. And the second floor is a residence. So that is the reasoning for having an adjustment of the classification of liability. You can see additional information on the property land description on page 10. And as well, we offer the initial application for the redevelopment of this property starting on page 37. So again, this is a mixed use development. So there is a residence on top and a medical office in the bottom. So that is the reason that we are asking for a change in the classification of liability, aside from the fact that it is a mixed use development.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I will. That's as simple as it gets. So I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Froelich, do you have any questions?
Yeah, is the suite self-contained? Is there a separate entrance and entrance for this property?
I believe for it to be deemed as a separate space, it would have to, and you can see on the page 9 that there is an entranceway there.
But is it separate from the rest of the building? Because if you're going to have it as a suite and have it classified as class 10, it would need to have a separate entrance.
So let's be clear about this. It's not like an apartment building. Design wise, it looks like an apartment building, but it is a residence. So,
okay. And has there an occupancy permit been applied for with regards to PP&D?
To occupy the space as
a residence.
I don't think it would have been approved had it not been. Okay,
so wouldn't that be the more formal process? Because you can't start, because aren't there safety concerns with regards to having, wouldn't planning, property and development have to do an inspection of this property to ensure that the class and liability would change?
Well, I would say that that's all part of the approval process on the development side.
So isn't that sort of like putting the cart before the horse? By asking for it at this stage of the process?
I mean, it's already there. So I would say that there has to be those checks and balances in place. I don't have the occupancy permit for it.
Okay.
And I'm not going to go looking for it submitted at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And just to confirm, because you only have the one picture of it, and is that a pipe in your picture on page 9?
I believe so. It does look like a pipe, although, yeah, that's what it appears
And
like.
and this self-contained unit that has a full kitchen, full bathroom on the second floor?
I don't have a good idea of what's in there. I was instructed that it is a residence. So if it is a residence, it likely has to have those features in there.
Okay, but you have
No,
okay.
no proof.
No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mann?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Werhan?
Just to refer to the property description again on page 10, it does say a kitchen island with sink, refrigerator, and other chattels were added in August of 2020, at which time the owner took occupancy.
Sorry. What's in my own description? Yes. Very
Yes,
good.
so, okay, so that's actually what there is there at this time. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Navarro, I wasn't clear, perhaps I just wasn't paying enough attention. Has there been an occupancy permit issued?
I don't have that occupancy permit here. And I'm not going to go looking through the occupancy site. I mean, I could, but it wasn't submitted. This description was described, I believe, to the board last year as well. So as far as I know, this property would have to have an occupancy permit to be occupied as a residence.
I'm sorry, you said it was at the board last year.
It would have to have an occupancy permit to be operated as a residence.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be an illegal use at that point.
Yes. Have you inspected the property?
No, I have not.
Okay, and this is the only picture of the residence that you have?
Yes.
Okay, I have no additional questions. Mr. Froelich, on the issue of classification and liability, please.
I thought we were dealing with, are we dealing with quantum now?
No? Do you have a presentation on classification?
Okay, sorry, I understand. I think as an overview, if we look at other residential spaces within the city of Winnipeg, apartment blocks, one of the key parameters for the city of Winnipeg to do is like, we won't add a property to the roll and deal with the classification issue until there's an actual occupancy permit in place. So based on the information provided here, we don't know if there's one of the key parameters of occupancy is a separate entrance, which is locked and self-contained. We have no information here with regards to the applicant's brief that there is that. We don't know if there's an actual washroom on the second floor or not, which is a key component of it. And as a general rule, I don't think we have enough information here to make such a significant change in class and liability. And I am mindful of the issues with regard to this property. However, my question that I would like to ask the panel members, so I do believe this property, they've had a vacancy issue on the second floor. And I'm just wondering if the property owner got a tenant for the second floor space, would we have to change the classification again back to 60T from 2010 if you change it today? That concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Navarro?
I would say that the spaces that are used for residential would likely remain residential. And if they are a result of an occupancy permit, then I don't see that being very likely. So I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Werhan?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's talk then about quantum, Mr. Froelich.
Actually,
Yes, go ahead.
Could okay, I'm just wondering if it makes sense. Don't usually panel members decide on class of liability first and there's a recess, or no?
Well, we're not going to,
Okay, no problem. I was just expecting that. Okay, thank you.
yeah.
No worries. I got 3 minutes.
Take your time.
Property was built in 2017. This is 286 Stradbrook.
It is.
I apologize. Sorry, I did have it. I apologize.
Okay.
Property was built in 2017. It has a leasable area of 3,999 square feet. On page 2, you can see where the property is located at. It's just off the corner of Stradbrook and Donald. You can see that on the top of on the red dot there. The assessed value that we have for this property is $1,124,000, all as 60T. Property shows with regards to the bottom of page 2. I have not inspected this property, but what I do have here is that on page 3, you can see what the property looked like before it was demolished. Then subsequently, you can see them building it on the bottom of page 3. And then you can see actually on page 5 what it currently looks like. So on page 4, what you can see here is you can actually see the permit taking place where they constructed the new medical office with regards to constructing the 2-story building here. You see all the details that are listed there. We have the project value of $600,000. That's located. This property has had an issue with regards to vacancy. And the date available for this property, if you look on the bottom, near the bottom of page 5, they've had a vacancy issue since 2019. So I'm very mindful of that. However, in my estimation, it's not trying to be leased out as an apartment block. It's only trying to be used as an office property. They're looking for $16 a square foot for the property, and the space that they have listed on the advertisement is 1,168 square feet. On page 6, you could have some additional details with regards to the terms of what the rental, what the property owner is looking for. And on page 7, we have an overview of the valuation of this property. We have the total area of 68,676. We have a 6% vacancy. We have a 3% expenses, $8 shortfall with a net operating income of $60,698. Utilizing a 5.4% cap rate, we come up with a value of $1,124,000. So if you look at the cap rate here as compared to the last property we were looking at, the cap rate's actually a bit lower because the property is a bit newer, just so you can make that connection, because the size is the same, the area is the same, but with regards to differentiation. And that's because buyers and sellers, more people can afford to buy this type of property. With that being said, same comparables for OFSs that we have here with regards to the averages. We've gone over the cap rate study, and this property is at the municipal board in 2010 or 2012 from the 2020 appeal, and I am mindful of the vacancy issues that the property owner is experiencing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Froelich. Mr. Navarro, do you have any questions?
I don't, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Mann, do you have any questions?
I do. Just talking about the vacancy loss, it appears as though the second floor has never been leased out, judging from the leasing pictures and what appears to be some what appears to be, well, what are the pictures in the applicant's brief? The 6% vacancy loss, is that a modeled rate or is that a rate that was?
That's a model generated rate, looking at the property. And so, because this property is on a municipal board from the previous cycle, in my estimation, the overall values will probably be discussed at the second level of appeal.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Thank you. Ms. Werhun, do you have any questions?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Froelich, I do have a question on your rent. You're using an average rent of $17.17 based on my calculations. Just looking at the OFS average rent, previously you've indicated the average is $15.85, weighted average 16.01, median of 15. This is, your model rent is higher than that OFS study would suggest. Could you explain that, please?
Based on age, newer OFSs are in the high teens, low 20s, and that's where the model generates it. I am mindful of the current situation of this property, but it's all generated from a model with similar OFSs of that type of year built. Because it's essentially a new built one. And so if we look at other OFSs within the city of Winnipeg, those are more reflective of those rents.
Could you point some out to me in your?
Well, I know a great example of that would be like 600 St. Anne's. On my brief, sorry. So actually on my brief, what you could end up having here is like, if you look at the rents on 600 St. Anne's.
Yeah.
Like number 44 is at $22 because that property was built like in the early 2000s, right? So I think that's a great example. Number 2 is at $18. 44 is at 22.
Okay. And these are all about the same age?
Yeah, because they're both of these properties are both built in the 21st century. And I was actually looking at the mailer before we actually started here at the summary here, and all those rents are in that range.
Okay.
So, and I'm mindful of the value of it, because as an outsider looking in, I can see why it's a bit aggressive. And with regards to the board's recommendations, I'm sure the evidence there understands why the rents are a bit higher than what we have.
Okay. And I note that your table doesn't include age in the property description or information. So it's difficult to compare then as a panel member.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. No worries. I have no additional questions. So Mr. Navarro, if you can present on quantum, please.
Madam Chair, I'm going to ask for a confirmation on this.
You're asking for a confirmation on what?
Yes.
What
on,
component?
On quantum and classification and liability.
So you're no longer wishing to argue for a class change?
No, I think the reasoning for asking for the confirmation is that there's just too many unknowns here.
Okay.
And I don't think that's fair to anyone if there are some question marks still there about this property. Okay. It needs to be inspected first. So I think if we need to appeal it, we'll appeal it to the municipal board. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Then I guess there's probably nothing more to ask about that. Okay, so we have now heard all items on our docket, and this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Everyone. Have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Only 7 minutes late.
Wow.
That's pretty good. That's my fault, Marcel. I asked too many questions.
We got
everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.